Hello, this evening I thought I'd do another one of my 1 year on videos. I've accumulated a lot of art materials over the last couple of years, and as I've been doing YouTube for a whole year now, I thought it'd be good as I go along throughout this year to review my art haul videos from a year ago and see how much I've used the things I bought in them and how much I like them. It's about a year ago now since I bought my A.Gallo watercolour paints, so that's what I'm going to look at tonight. Not long ago I put all of my half-pan watercolours into these two big tins, including my A.Gallo paints. I initially glue gunned them into the tins, but I've managed to get hold of some thicker magnet sheeting now, so I'll gradually replace the bottoms of the pans with magnets. I'm just going to take out the A.Gallo paints then and take a closer look at them. So you can see I have used all of them, but some definitely more than others. The A.Gallo paints start off as the most filled pans that I've ever come across, and they always smell wonderful when you use them because they contain rosemary oil. I thought what I'd do is swatch each one out and talk about them as I go along. I'm using a Tintoretto brush which came with the initial set of 12 A.Gallo paints that I bought, though I modified it by snipping off the long tip on it. This first one is buff titanium, and I had it in my little metal travel palette of 20 colours. It seems like a fairly standard buff titanium, and I'm happy to use it interchangeably with my Daniel Smith buff titanium. In each of these swatch boxes, I'll paint solid colour on the left hand side, and then I'll paint like a rectangle of clear water next to it, and then touch them into each other so that you can see how the paint flows. This next colour is Azo Yellow Gold. It's a very pretty yellow, and I don't have anything exactly like it. I haven't found it a very good mixing yellow though. It's semi-opaque and it makes slightly murky mixes. It's quite a heavy paint too and doesn't flow very quickly. The next colour is Arancione, and it's a lovely, slightly burnt orange colour. And interestingly, it's got PV19 in the mixture. I don't have anything else quite like it. It's quite a heavily opaque paint, though it's classed as semi-opaque by A.Gallo. And this one does flow slightly faster than quite a few of the others. Next up is Vermilion Red, which is a beautiful rich red. It's very similar in colour to Daniel Smith's Spiral Scarlet, but it behaves quite differently. It feels like a lot denser, and I much prefer Daniel Smith's Spiral Scarlet as a mixing colour. I have to say though, I'm not a super experienced watercolourist, and so these are just my own opinions and impressions for the quite small amount of watercolouring that I do. This next one is Ruby Red, and it too has similar characteristics to a lot of the A.Gallo paints, in that it's a gorgeous colour in its own right, doesn't flow particularly well, and feels like a slightly heavy, sluggish paint. I'm not saying that this is a negative characteristic, but it's a quality of a paint that you need to kind of be aware of and work with. I personally prefer faster flowing and quicker dispersing paints. This current one is Pietra Rose. Again, another really beautiful colour. It doesn't have a high tinting strength. It takes quite a bit of re-wetting. I don't have any other colours like it. This colour is Quinacridone Magenta, and of my other paints it's most similar to Daniel Smith's May and Violet. It's a bit darker and cooler than my other PR122 pigments. It's a similar colour to Roman Schmall's Quinacridone Violet and Magello Mission Gold's Quinacridone Violet, but they're a lot smoother. The A.Gallo one is kind of denser particles. This is Tyrian Purple, and it's quite a nice delicate granulating purple. It doesn't have high tinting strength and is quite hard to re-wet though. This next colour is one of my most favourite A.Gallo paints, and it's Notturno. It's a lovely deep granulating purple, and I've had it in my main travel palette of 20 half pans. I've reached the bottom of this pan and there's still quite a bit left, but it's a colour I would definitely buy over and over again. It also has more flow to it. Next up is Indanthrone Blue. This isn't a colour I use an awful lot, but it doesn't stand out in any particular way from my other PB60s. And here's A.Gallo's version of Ultramarine, PB29. It's a really nice ultramarine, but again, I don't know what it is about the A.Gallo paints, but it's not my preferred mixing ultramarine. There's kind of a almost sticky denseness about it. Comparing it with my other ultramarines, Schmink is the most granulating, A.Gallo sits somewhere in the middle, and then this bottom row is the smoother ones. And then we have this very opaque cerulean hue. It's not a standard PB36, but it's a mixture, and it includes white in the mixture. I use this in the sky in the painting that I do later in this video. This is aquamarine, and it's a little bit similar to Roman Schmol's ocean blue. It's quite a nice turquoise, but I've just not had much occasion to use it. And then next up is this really quite opaque teal blue. In colour it's quite similar to Daniel Smith's Sleeping Beauty Turquoise Genuine, but it doesn't granulate like that one does, and this has a white in it too. And the last one in this row is one of my favourite A.Gallo colours, and it's copper blue. It's such a pretty, delicate colour, and I don't have anything else the same. Then we have Earth Green Cool, which seems like a fairly standard PG23. It doesn't have high tinting strength, and I've used this one a fair bit. Next is Dark Forest, and this is another paint that I had in my travel palette of 20, and I've used it quite a lot. It's very similar to a Perylene Green, though it's a mixture of pigments rather than PBK31. This next one is a paint that I've not used very much. It's Harbour Blue, but it's one that I'm quite excited to use more now that it's in my big main palette. The only thing I've got similar to it is Schminker's Forest Blue in the super granulating range, and this is like a completely smooth version of that. This is A.Gallo's version of Forest Green, but it's not really a green I use all that often. It's a little bit unnatural really. And this is Viridian Hue. I made a mistake writing the pigments down on this one. As well as PG7, it's also PB29. This paint doesn't have as high tinting strength as you might expect from the pigments in it. I really like all the colours on this last row now. This is Fig Green, and I think it's a really lovely green. It's quite bright, but there's a subtle undertone to it. The only reason that I haven't used more of it so far is because I've been using up some Holbein Leaf Green, which is quite similar. Then this is Olive Green Deep, and it's a wonderful, interesting granulating green, and it's pretty comparable with Roman Schmol's Aquarius Green and Daniel Smith's Undersea Green. This next one is a paint which I only bought fairly recently, and it's Verdaccio. I think it's a great natural landscape colour, and it's like a smooth version of Daniel Smith's German greenish raw umber. I use it for the cliffs in the painting, which I do later in this video. And then this is Transparent Red Oxide, and I've used it quite a bit. It's like a lovely, gentle granulating, burnt sienna kind of colour. And this is one of my favourite all-time browns. It's the lovely cool chromite brown, and it's like a granulating sepia. The only thing I'll say about this one though is that its consistency seems to have changed over the last month or two that I've used it, and it seems to be developing quite large lumps in the granulation, so I'm not quite sure what that's about. I do use it in the painting after this though. It's quite similar to Roman Schmol's Van Dyke Brown, which I also love. And then this last one, which I forgot to pull out earlier, is Paynes Grey, It's quite a blue Paynes Grey. You can see it here compared to some of my others. So that's all of my A.Gallo paints swatched out now. I painted them onto Bao Hong's hot press paper, though I'm not sure this does justice to the granulating ones. And next I'll do a painting in my Etchr Everyday Sketchbook, which is cold press paper. I really love this paper, but I get too scared to use this sketchbook. But I've decided that I'm just going to dive in and try and use it more often now. I've put washi tape around the edges of this page, and I'm just going to do a really loose watercolour landscape. I want something pretty fast and easy because I'm still kind of tired from COVID at the moment. I'll keep the painting section in real time again. I've done that a few times lately, and it seems that people are quite interested in seeing it in real time. So I'm sorry if you're not one of them and find this a bit boring, not sped up. So for the sky, I started off using the buff titanium on the left hand side, and then I've gone in with a cerulean hue, which is one that I was saying is quite opaque. And then now I'm using my new Verdaccio on the cliffs. This Etchr cold press paper really is a dream to paint on. I just love it. I bought this Etchr Everyday Sketchbook myself last year, but since then Etchr have sent me their Everyday Hot Press Sketchbook, so at some point I'll do a video comparing the two papers. This is the chromite brown that I'm using now on the right hand side. And then for this little grassy area on the headland, I'm using the olive green deep. I've not really planned out this painting at all, so I'm just going back to the sky and blending it in a bit better. I used a number of different blues in the sea, the Indanthrone blue, aquamarine, the copper blue, and a couple of touches of harbour blue. And then I actually used the earth green cool for the shallowest water over the sand. And I used some more buff titanium mixed with a tiny bit of azo yellow gold for the sand. And then I put a few Paynes Grey darker details in the rocks here. I then dry off the paint with a heat tool, and then using a charcoal pencil from General's, a soft one, I put some more details in. So 1 year on with my A.Gallo paints, I'd say that they are beautiful paints. I love the smell of them. There are some beautiful, unique colours. But they aren't my favourite paints for mixing with, and they are slow flowing. Of the paints I have, I'd say that I'd buy about half of them again. And a few have become fan favourites, including Naterno, Copper Blue, Dark Forest, Fig Green, Olive Green Deep, Verdaccio and Chromite Brown. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the A.Gallo paints, and also for the benefit of anybody who might come across this video and read the comments, wanting to know about A.Gallo paints. I hope this has been interesting anyway, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!